How about that? Okay. Could I ask everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have roll call, please.
Ryan Baker. Tammy Bolin.
Here.
James Chrisman.
Here.
John Collette.
Here.
Jim Crawley. Chuck Innes.
Here.
Jeff Ford. Nord Frodeman.
Here.
Don Folk.
Here.
John Hanley.
Here.
Debbie May. Chris Schweitzer. William Verdine.
Here.
Fred Wilson.
Okay, we do have a quorum. And Brendan's sitting in for Commissioner Schweitzer. Okay, has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes and the status report? Are there any corrections?
I'd move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion passes. Are there any comments from the public at this time? Not that you know. Okay. Director's report, Assistant Director's report.
I don't really have much to report right now. We did a class on surveying this past month that kind of taught us a lot about reading the plats and how they do everything. That helps us a lot with making sure everything is correct. So that's something very interesting that we did.
Okay.
Last month, we had a lady get up and speak about, regulations regarding pipelines and such. So I thought I might include this month with my report, the information that we got, the Boardwalk Developers Guideline for it's Boardwalk Developers Handbook for regulations around pipelines and things like that. So a good read if you have a chance to take a minute to read through that. It really kind of lays out how they handle work in and around those big pipelines, some of which we have running right through Vigo County that supply nationally gas lines, oil lines, things of those nature. The admin subs probably have the highest flow-through rate now that I have seen since we started doing it. As you can see, we have 4 here, and we have another 3 of them in the works. So we're juggling, like 8 or so admin subs right now on top of the caseload that you see before you. So it's been a busy month for us, and on top of that, you have a whole stack of letters of remonstrance regarding different agenda items. We'll address those letters that you have in front of you, as well as an additional ordinance that has been amended once we approach those items on the agenda.
Okay, any questions from the Planning Commission?
Motion for approval.
Have a second? Second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion passes. Do you have anything to report on the Flag Committee?
That was
No?
it.
Okay. Okay, the first item is docket number 54, file 31, 2021, Armstrong 3-lot subdivision.
Mr. President, fellow members of the Commission, my name is Richard Shagley. I represent the Armstrongs in this matter. We would ask if we could just have one more extension on this. We're trying to work out some of the details on this variance.
Any questions?
Computer's locked.
Motion to table.
Thank you very much.
It's unlocked.
Second.
All aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the next item, docket number 65, GO5, 2020, one modification of the Terre Haute City Code.
Yeah, we had received word that this was to be withdrawn, though we never received notification from the city of any activities of the sort. As we've received nothing new, we would request it be tabled again at this time.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, the next item is docket number 75, Special Ordinance 40, 2021, 1055 South Hunt Street, Terre Haute, from an M2 to a C3 Regional Commercial District.
The property owners are Colnago LLC and Paul L. Walton, represented by Mr. Shagley. Proposed use is a medical eye clinic with ambulatory surgery center. It is proposed C3 Regional Commerce District. The current zoning is M2 Heavy Industrial District. The property is located approximately 3,000 feet south of the intersection of East State Road 42 and South Hunt Street on the west side of South Hunt Street. Its common address is 1055 South Hunt Street. To the north is M2 and O1, O1 to the west, M2 and O1 to the south, and O1 to the east. The petitioner is requesting to rezone to C3 Regional Commerce District for the purpose of a medical eye clinic with ambulatory surgery center. Medical and dental clinics are a listed use in the C3 district. The parking lot is already hard surfaced with sufficient parking. The driveway is within 12 feet of the interior lot line, section 10-136E, and will need a variance from the City Board of Zoning Appeals. Staff would offer a favorable recommendation with the approval of the variance.
Mr. Shagley.
Good evening, Mr. President, fellow members of the council. My name is Richard Shagley. I'm with the law firm of Wright, Shagley, and Lowry. And tonight I'm here on behalf of the petitioners, Colunga LLC and Paul Walton. They're the owners of the property located at 1055 South Hunt Street, and as is stated, it's currently zoned as a C3, M2 Heavy Industrial District, and we're requesting tonight to be zoned to a C3 Regional Commerce District. And as stated, the purpose is for a medical eye clinic and for a surgery center. As stated, there is a need for a variance. The driveway that's been there since the beginning is too close to the property line, so we will be filing a variance asking for a little leeway on the required footage from the property line to the entryway. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. As far as since the filing of this and the notice, our office has not received any complaints regarding this proposed rezoning.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Shagley? Anyone speaking in opposition to this petition? Do I have a motion?
I'd move for a favorable recommendation.
In favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item, docket number 76, Special Ordinance 42, 2021, 619 Washington Avenue, Terre Haute, from an R2 to an R2 Plan Development, two-family Plan Development District.
The property owner is the Nextstep Foundation, represented by Mr. Shagley. The proposed use is a cafe, administrative offices, and women's recovery center. The proposed zoning is R2 Plan Development. Currently, Lot 1 is zoned R2 Plan Development, and Lot 2 is R2 two-family residence. The property is located on the southeast corner of South 6th Street and Washington Avenue, and its address is 619 Washington Avenue. To the north is R3, to the east R2, to the south R2, and to the west R2 Plan Development. The petition property is located within Farrington Grove's Historical District. Planned developments are uses that may be permitted under certain circumstances which are not permitted use in the zone district where said planned development is proposed. A planned development is a floating zone. Before a planned development can be considered, the petitioner must show proof of one of the following unique circumstances: that the petitioner has a hardship due to the physical characteristics of the land, a hardship due to the improvements on the land, a hardship due to the adjacent scattered incompatible uses, a hardship due to the general deterioration of the neighborhood, or the parcel is located near district boundary lines. In 2012, Special Ordinance Number 2, 2012, the northern parcel was rezoned R2 PD for a women's recovery center with a variance for 0 parking spaces. Since the intended use did not materialize within 6 months, the zoning reverted back to R2. Please note that the zoning on Beacon was not changed back from R2 PD. The petitioner has requested the previous parcel, as well as a vacant parcel to the south, be rezoned R2 Plan Development for the existing cafe, administrative offices, and a proposed women's-only recovery center for 20 residents. New construction will be attached to the existing historical church building. They are also requesting a variance from section 10-113A2 for 0 off-street parking and from section 10-136 for 0 setbacks due to the existing structure. The site plan for the new construction will need to be approved by city engineering. The parcels may need to be combined. Staff has a favorable recommendation for the R2PD with the following conditions: site plan to be approved by city engineering.
Okay, is petitioner present? Yes, he is.
Good evening, Mr. President, fellow members of the commission. My name is Richard Shagley. I'm with the law firm of Wright, Shagley, and Lowry, and tonight I'm here on behalf of the petitioner, Nextstep Foundation. As stated, they're the property owners at 619 Washington Street here in Terre Haute, and they're here tonight asking it to be rezoned to an R2 plan development. As stated, it currently is R2 plan development and then R2. It is their hope for this rezoning so they can keep moving forward with the plans of the cafe, that they can use the building, the existing building for the administrative offices, some housing in the basement, and then for the classes, for the kitchen and the eating. They're proposing to build a new building and attach it to the existing church to allow for the residents of that facility to utilize the meeting rooms, the kitchen, as well as some of the bathroom and laundry amenities. Nextstep isn't tearing down a house. They're going to use a vacant lot that they currently own, and we believe this will be a good fit. As far as the hardships go, there is scattered use throughout this neighborhood, so I believe that they meet the hardship, as well as the the incompatible use with the church next door, and then the deterioration of the area. Plus, obviously, it's located in the boundary lines. As stated, there's a mixed-use zoning throughout this whole area. So I believe they meet the hardship. In front of you is an updated site plan. It looks something like this. I point your attention to this. The new building, as diagrammed on here, it says new Nextstep structure. And I apologize. Does anybody else want a copy of this, or has anybody read it? And on the second page, you'll see the renderings done by Matt Holder. The new building, as you can see, is on the right, and as you can see, every attempt we made to match the brick. We're matching the roof pitch, and then you'll also see the similar details between the buildings with the doors and the windows. They're making a great effort to build a building that, although new, won't stick out as a new building. And as a result, they hope this is approved so they can do that. At this point, I'd like to invite the executive director to come up and give you a little background on Nextstep. I know a lot of you weren't here in 2012 when they came through, and I think it'd be important for you to hear what they do and what they accomplish in our community and the needs that they serve.
Hello, my name is Dana Simons. I'm the executive director of Nextstep, also the co-founder 10 years ago. Sure wish I didn't have to be here. Sure wish we didn't have an addiction problem in our community. And I especially wish we didn't have to expand, that we needed more. We started this as concerned community members, moved here from California and just saw that there was a methamphetamine issue. We were working at the homeless shelter, and we thought we could help. So we ended up acquiring the church. We've put a lot of effort, as is the city of Terre Haute has invested $300,000 in that church from community development block grants. So we've redone all the brick. We've put a new roof on it. We've redone the inside of it, inside and out, as far as all the flooring and everything that's been in there. We also have been donated 3 properties in the area by neighbors who are impressed with what we were doing. So we own 5 single-family dwellings very close to 6119, where a lot of our residents live. They come for 90 days, which we call Step In, and then they can apply to stay for another 90 days, which we call Step Up. And then they can live in some of our apartments in the local area, which is step out. They have to work, we have curfews, we have video surveillance. We are not a medical facility. We do not dispense medication or do anything with medication. We do have 6 peer recovery coaches. We also have 5 clinicians, myself included. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Went back to ISU to kind of see if I could help even further. We are partnering right now, and the need for this building is we are partnering with Union Health and the Richard Luger Center. When a woman tests positive for illicit drugs, they try to do everything they can to wrap services around to be able to help them to stay sober during their pregnancy, and oftentimes their living situation doesn't allow them to do that because they're living with someone that continues to use drugs, and so they are constantly looking for housing. We've been a big source of that for them, for pregnant women, but we need some more space to do that, and so we would like to use this vacant lot to be able to provide the housing, the much-needed housing in this area. In 2020, 74% of all the children that were removed by DCS were removed because of illicit parental substance use problems. So it is not a problem that's going away. Like I said, unfortunately, I would love to be able to just be out of business, but sadly, we are effective. We have about 70% of our people. 6 of the people that work at Nextstep have 4 to 5 years of sobriety and went back and became peer recovery coaches, and about 74% of our people finished the 90 days, and about a little over 50% are sober a year later, so we're keeping people out of the criminal justice system. I think John Plassey, Sheriff Plassey, sent his support today, that he supports this move because we know that we need this recovery housing. So I know a lot of my neighbors are here, and I know they don't want to have this building go up, but I would agree with that. I'm a neighbor. I live on Center Street. I live right across the alley, and I have a beautiful 1895 home that I love the historic nature of my neighborhood. Our homes, and we try to keep them as in best shape as possible. There have been 5,600 volunteer hours that have been put into the Farrington Grove neighborhood by Thompson Thrift, who has adopted us as their charity of choice, and they have replaced windows, and they have done landscaping, and they have done floors, and they have done roofs, all at their own cost. And they also restored the building at 1405, which was we called it the Jumanji House. It was this big, giant 4-unit building that had been vacant right next door to me for 5 years, and possums were living in it, and they were kind enough to buy it and restore it and then donate it to us so we can use it for apartments. We also have a big need for apartments when the women do have their children and get their children reunited, and they want to stay close to the mothership, which is really what the church is, which is where they have classes and they have counseling and they have peer coaching, and we have 14 hours a week of different things going on there. Recovery Cafe started in Seattle. It's 18 years ago, and there are recovery cafes all over the country now. And that is just a place, I call it a sober cheers. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, and it's a program where they can actually have a meal and meet with somebody and meet with community volunteers. And what we do works, and we just would really appreciate the support to be able to keep doing what we need to do and serve the people that we need to serve, to keep them out of the criminal justice system and restore them back to their families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you continue, you do have in front of you, you have 2 sets of letters. There's 5 in favor and 7 against. Generally, the ones in favor noted how the property is meticulously maintained, and they stress the importance of recovery centers. And then you do have 7 in opposition, and the common themes of the ones in opposition are that it undermines the residential nature of the historic neighborhood. They believe a new construction is not consistent with the neighborhood. They're afraid it will hurt property value. They're concerned about visitors and parking, and concerned about criminal activity. Yep, and there's also an amended version of the ordinance where they added the variance for setbacks because that wasn't in the original ordinance they submitted.
Does anybody have any questions for Dana about Nextstep?
Yeah, she was quick. Any questions from the Planning Commission? Is there anyone speaking in
Well,
opposition?
I've got a few more comments if I can.
Oh, okay, sure.
In front of you, I put a packet of letters. The top one's from Sheriff Plassey. And then behind that's a letter from Mark Wright. Mark Wright, there's Jason Williams, Colleen Chestnut, Tim Ramsey from Farrington Grove neighborhood, Paul Thrift from Thompson Thrift, Senator Ford, House Representative Tanya Paff, letter from the commissioners, all Mike Morris, Brendan Kearns, and Chris Schweitzer, TJ Warren, who's the CEO of Valley Professional Health Community Health Center, Link Hobbs, CPA from Hobbs and Company, he's also a Farrington Grove neighbor, Robin Luger from Indiana State University, who lives at 1504 South Center Street, Reichman Ramani, he's the executive director of the Richard Luger Center for Rural Health, Richard Payonk from the United Way, Jennifer Hutchins from the Anna Brock Branch Recovery Center, and as well as from Dana. And what there is just an overwhelming support of this project, and you'll see also a need. I personally enjoyed the letter from Mark Wright. He was a resident of Farrington Grove and found himself surrounded by Nextstep homes. And as you can imagine, or maybe suspect, he had some fears because of that. As it turned out, as you'll see in his letter, it turned out they were great neighbors and liked the Nextstep program so much, he donated his house to Nextstep. So that's one of the homes in Nextstep. As far as the homes go, passing around right now is some photos of the homes that they have in the Farrington Grove area. There's also some before and after photos. I think it's pretty telling and pretty clear that they maintain their properties, and that they've also taken some properties that were not in the best of shape and turned them around. Now, through this process, I've had the opportunity to speak with a couple people who in the area, and there was some complaints about maybe some of the maintenance of the homes, and my opinion on that is, I imagine if you ask my neighbors, they'd probably like me to do a little bit more. You can't make everybody happy, but what we've seen and what we believe with Nextstep is they're doing a great job in keeping a lot of people happy. We believe they've been a good neighbor and a good resident in this community. As she stated, they purchased the church at 619th Washington and saved it through some assistance from the city and through some very good benefactors of Nextstep. They were able to put a roof on it, fix the HVAC, and have really saved that building. And then they also have in this area 1400 South Center Street, which is a home for 5 women, 1408 South Center Street, which is a home for 8 women, 1405 South Center Street, which is 4 apartments that allow for families who have graduated from the program, 1415 South 7th Street, which is 4 apartments again, 1201 South 6th Street, which is a home for 5 men who have graduated from the program, 506 Willow Street, which is a home for 8 men, and then 1400, as I said, 1400 South 7th Street also houses some staff and graduates. And they also have 2 homes, one in Vermilion County and one in Park County. The explanation for that is Nextstep was basically asked to come to those counties. The Sheriff's Department and the groups that are fighting this war in our communities asked Nextstep to come to them because they knew what they did and they knew the good they were doing in our community. So they're not only helping Vigo County, but they're helping Park County. And also, they're not just helping, the 1,300 people that have gone through the program, but when you consider how many people those 1,300 bodies or lives affect, the amount of people that Nextstep has helped is really uncountable. Unfortunately, this is a problem in our community, and it's a problem that affects us all. Chances are everybody has faced a problem that they try to solve in our community. Their role in our community is very important, and their ability to grow well, I guess that's not a good thing, because ideally we want them to close down because we don't need them. But fortunately, they have the ability to grow thanks to great community support, and they need help from you tonight to allow them to move forward and rezone this property. The question, why Farrington Grove? It's a great location. It's close to the highway. There's 3 different bus routes that go through there. There's daycares, there's schools, there's Head Start, all in the Farrington Grove area. You're a mile from downtown, and ultimately it's close to all the services that these people need, whether it's through the health department, whether it's through the courts, whether it's through different service providers that assist in these ways. It's a great place because of that, because they can get to the places they need to go. So that's why they've found their way in the Farrington Grove, and that's why they really have flourished in that area. And we believe they've been a good neighbor in the process. Now tonight, you'll probably hear some people that don't support this. I've spoken to a few of them, and I've also just heard. One issue was the setbacks, and I think our new site plan clarifies that. As you'll see, the new building will be a good distance from its neighbor to the south. The no setbacks is really for the existing church and the current building and the inability to move that building. So they would require the 0 setbacks on that. But as the new site plan shows, they are well within the setback boundaries established by our city code. The other variance that was requested was the no off-street parking. This was asked for in 2012 and unanimously granted in 2012. The reality is the clientele of Nextstep don't have cars. They walk, they ride bikes, or they take public transportation. I think in the 1,300 people, there's been 18 cars of those 1,300 people. So parking in the neighborhood is not, in our opinion, an issue because ultimately the clientele and the people that are helped by Nextstep unfortunately do not have cars. And again, from 2012 to 2018, there were 20 people living in that facility, and I'm not aware of any complaints to the city about the parking in that area. The next thing I heard was a new building is not going to fit in our neighborhood. Well, I would agree that some new buildings wouldn't fit in that neighborhood. I think I applaud Nextstep for working with Matt Holder. As you'll see in that second page of that new handout with the site plan, they've gone, in my opinion, above and beyond to make this new addition work. I think ultimately it'll be a good fit, and it's one of those things probably in 5 years you'll forget that that's a new construction because of the way it blends into the existing building. Through my discussions with the city, I'm not aware of any complaints with the city that they don't maintain their homes. Again, so I think they've been a good neighbor. And like I said, as far as I am aware, complaints about the way they manage their property has not been an issue. And I think we'll probably hear the property value. We always hear the property value, this is going to hurt my property values. In looking at the property owners around 619 Washington, if you look at their assessed values, they've all gone up over the last 5 years. So I don't think you can say their property values are going to be diminished because of this, because this was going on since 2012 in that building. and the property values continue to go up. And then I would suspect, there was some that's obviously a vacant lot, so it's green space, that's great. And I understand the importance of that. There will still be green space. Obviously, it won't be the complete lot, but there will be green space, obviously along the building as well as behind it. There's 30 or so feet from the back of the building to the alley, and then approximately the same amount from the front of the building to the sidewalk. One of the complaints I heard through another rezoning for another recovery facility in this area was the cigarette butts and smoking. And for whatever reason, when going through this process, if you didn't already smoke, chances are you might pick up smoking. And there's a lot of people in recovery that smoke. Well, obviously they gotta smoke outside. Right now there's a place, but you could go there any time of the day, you're not gonna find any butts. Nextstep understands this, and they make sure that the area is clean. Going forward, as you can see by the site plan, they're proposing to put in a gazebo and fence in the area to kind of keep it out of sight from the public, which I think will be a good addition to this project. The other concern I had heard was them giving out medicine, some type of walk-in clinic. That's not the case, as you heard, they're dispensing type of medicine. And then ultimately, the last thing that we will hear tonight, and maybe you won't hear it directly, but ultimately not in my backyard. My guess is you'll hear a lot of people stand up and say, I support recovery and I think it's important, but there'll be a but somewhere in there. And ultimately what they want to say is they don't want it in my backyard. They want it to go somewhere else. But as I stated earlier, there is true benefits to being in Farrington Grove because of the proximity to the services they need and the access to public transportation. And ultimately, the clientele and customers of Nextstep and Nextstep itself have been good neighbors to this neighborhood, and we believe there's no reason why it wouldn't go on in the future. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Shagley? Okay, is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this petition? Yes, ma'am.
I have a statement of my own that's about 2 minutes, and I have a statement by proxy from a neighbor who could not be here tonight, and that is also 2 minutes.
Can we have your name?
I'm getting there. My name is Carrie Youssef. I live at 824 South 5th Street. I am here tonight in person to express my opposition to Special Ordinance 42. You have already received a letter from me outlining my concerns, and I'm here tonight to add 2 important issues to my already documented concerns, and you can find my letter in your packet. Number 1, in the days since Mr. Dice received notification of the petition to rezone the property adjacent to his home, I have worked in conjunction with Mr. Dice to canvass the neighborhood. I have knocked on doors, spoken in person, and had many one-on-one conversations with the actual residents of Farrington Grove. Currently, Mr. Dice and I have a petition of more than 80 signatures against Special Ordinance 42. These 80 signatures represent 80 residents, 80 property owners, and indeed more than 80 households in Farrington Grove. This petition is valid representation of the neighborhood's united opposition to Special Ordinance 42. Number 2, in the actual ordinance as submitted, it reads, and I quote, "A plan development as set forth hereby approved and will be in the public's interest and in the interest of the neighborhood." Page 3. The R2 plan development would not alter the general characteristics of this neighborhood. Page 5. And your petitioner would respectfully show the proposed change would not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in the neighborhood. page 6. This language, even if it is boilerplate language, is disingenuous. Mr. Shagley does not speak for Farrington's Grove. He's a paid lawyer for Nextstep. And more importantly, Nextstep does not speak for Farrington's Grove. They are a commercial business with a single focus on their business and expansion. The only people that speak for Farrington's Grove are the residents, many of whom are here tonight, others who sent letters like mine in opposition, and the 80-plus people who have signed the petition against Special Ordinance 42. I would note that the long list of names Mr. Shagley made of people in support of the project, and let's be clear, the project is recovery, it's not about a building. Sheriff Plass doesn't live in the neighborhood. Tonya Paff doesn't live in the neighborhood. Rick Payon doesn't live in the neighborhood. Mark Wright no longer lives in the neighborhood. Very few of those people live in the neighborhood, maybe 2 or 3 of the packet of letters you have before you. They are supporters of recovery. They don't live in the neighborhood, and this is a zoning issue. It's about zoning and a building. It's not about recovery. I remind you that you are obligated in your role to make decisions based on the needs and the future of the neighborhood. Farrington's Grove has sent you a clear message. This rezoning and the proposed new dormitory, 20-plus individuals, is not in the neighbor's interest. It will alter the characteristics of the neighborhood, and it will be detrimental and injurious to the property and improvements in the neighborhood. And I urge each of you to vote not approve to Special Ordinance 42. And now I'm going to read by proxy an email sent to me from Mrs. Jennifer Martin, who lives on South 6th Street on the block exactly under question with Special Ordinance 42. And I begin reading. My concerns for the rezoning and subsequent dorm building project cover several items. Firstly, the members of the Nextstep program are not always good neighbors. Before meetings, there are constantly groups of people near the picnic tables, often using profanity, being loud, and overall intimidating. There have been instances of catcalling over their time here, and my children do not feel comfortable being in the front yard when they are present, nor do I feel comfortable at times gardening. Secondly, as a homeowner who has invested a great deal into the improvement of my home and property, I have genuine concerns about the effect that the addition of a dormitory will have on the value of my home. We are situated only a short distance from an elementary school. The children attending Farrington Grove have to walk to and from school. They are outside of the bus route. While there is a need for what is being proposed, I do not believe that a family neighborhood with such a close proximity to an elementary school is the proper choice. Thirdly, as a former foster parent, I am well versed in the need for what is being requested. However, I'm also aware of the baggage that may come with it. While the individuals seeking treatment may really be seeking a new life for themselves, that does not guarantee that everyone in their lives, domestic partners, parents, dealers, are also supporting this decision. This could mean that unsavory characters are drawn into the Grove by proxy, resulting in an increase in crime and a decrease of feeling safety inside our homes. Signed, Jenny Martin, 12/1/2021. Thank you.
My name is James R. Jenkins, and I live at 1515 South 6th Street. My wife and I are the owners of that property. My wife and I moved there, bought the property over 20 years ago, and we have since, along with the purchase price, invested a great deal of our money in maintenance and improvements. We moved there specifically because it was an historic neighborhood. We wanted to live in a neighborhood, and we specifically wanted to live in the only historic neighborhood that we have, Terre Haute. This project does, and with all the troubled souls that it will house, will have an adverse effect on the flavor and the character and the overall sense of neighborhood. It's a dormitory. It's not a house, not a home. It's a dormitory that will house transitory consumers. And that's not historic. The other homes that Nextstep has acquired, renovated, and used are R2s, and they were used in an R2 fashion. If this was an R2 property, I'd say knock yourself out. Do what you want. But it's not. They're asking for it to be changed. There are other places to do this. When Nextstep first came, they said they were not going to expand, but yet they have. And you know as well as I do that any business here has got to expand. You can't just keep producing 100 widgets every day and live like that for the rest of your lives. That's not going to happen. Every business here, and many of you I know are businessmen who have been associated with businesses, you have to expand. You have to keep growing. You have to have more consumers. You have to have more income, donations, whatever you want to call it, so that you can continue doing your work. Farrington Grove is not the place to expand. It's mostly R2. It's an historic neighborhood district. The director mentioned that they will be working with Union Hospital and the Luger Center. Wonderful. It's great. Those ladies are going to have lots of services. And there's a great number of places up by the Luger Center. The redevelopment section of the city has control over a number of those properties, and I'm sure the mayor and the sheriff, everybody else would love to help them get one of those spots right up there where they could just walk right out of the Luger Center into their dormitory after they've had their services if they need it. If we just insist on having a neighborhood experience for this dormitory, I'd say we've done our part. And you're right. Not in my neighborhood. We've done our part. We have a rehabilitative service there now. We have the Vigo County Group Home there now. There are other neighborhoods, College Park, Edgewood Grove, Lincolnshire, Terra Vista, Deming Woods. I could go on. All of those are wonderful neighborhoods. They're all great. So why don't we see if we can't get a neighborhood experience in each one of those? Go out and see if we can find some homes there. That way we're spread out a little bit. You're not around 8, 10, whatever, however many houses that Nextstep has right now with other people that all have problems that are trying to escape them. There are other places. There's just no doubt about that. But what really peeves me here, and I know I'm sure you have a lot of peeves yourselves, but what really peeves me about this is the rezoning portion, the mechanics of this. We've been rezoned for lawyers. We've been rezoned for-profit rehabilitative centers. We've been rezoned for businesses. We've been rezoned quite a bit in an historic neighborhood. Don't see that in College Park, Edgewood Grove, Lincolnshire, Terra Vista, Deming Woods, etc. It's all happening in Farrington's Grove. Zoning, as I understand it, some time ago, came about through the efforts of a lot of folks and a lot of organizations, area planning, the city council, the mayor's office, redevelopment, all sorts of people and departments came together to create zoning for the city for specific purposes. We wanted neighborhoods here, and we wanted business over here, and we wanted manufacturing over here, we wanted retail over here. But here we are again, asking for a rezoning of an historic neighborhood. And I submit to you, we've been rezoned enough. When someone decides that zoning wasn't meant for them, we, my neighbors and others, end up having to make calls, pass around petitions, and even hire some legal help to beg and plead all of these organizations, these bodies, to do what you said you would do when zoning was passed, and that's to enforce it. It's a dormitory. This is an R2 property. It doesn't fit. That's why we're here tonight. I wouldn't ask for an answer. I wouldn't expect one. I know better. But if this was 3 feet from your property, like Mr. Dice, or if it was 1 block away from your house, like it is from mine, you would no more vote for this than a nuclear dump at 7th Wabash. Send this to the city council with a negative recommendation. It's a dormitory, and it doesn't fit in our already rezoned, time after time, neighborhood.
Okay. Someone else would like to speak?
Good evening. My name's Margaret Herdlick. I have lived in Farrington Grove for over 20 years with my husband, and we have our 2 school-age children who live with us as well. I do have a prepared statement, but as I was listening, I started writing notes, as we often do, so I feel a little disorganized at the moment. I'll do my best.
Excuse me a moment.
Yes.
Did you give me your address? I can't hardly understand.
How about that?
No, that's
I live at 908 South 7th Street.
okay.
So I strongly oppose the rezoning being requested today. And I don't need to tell you that zoning exists for an important purpose, and that is to ensure that we are using land for inappropriate ways, and in many cases to protect the unique character of residential areas. The oldest neighborhood in the city of Terre Haute needs and deserves this protection. New construction of a 20-plus bed dormitory violates the spirit of the zoning code, and it asks for an exception that will have a lasting negative impact on the neighborhood. And lasting is the word I want to emphasize. This will be a permanent structure. Anything could happen in the next 5 to 10 years. Nextstep could leave, and then we have a dormitory. And you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like a great place for a fraternity or student housing. And a fraternity needs parking. And you heard Mr. Shagley say, well, they don't need cars. Well, first of all, I would argue with that a little bit, because people visiting these women, people coming to see the children, people, family members, they have cars and they need parking. But certainly if this changes hands or purposes in the future, they will need parking. And we're going to struggle with that at that point. We don't need more fraternity houses in that area. And these are the kind of things that keep neighbors awake at night, worrying about this kind of thing. It also sends a really alarming precedent if you keep rezoning. This is what Mr. Jenkins was just referring to. So what about when the next organization comes to you and said, well, you approved it for Hickory and you approved it for Nextstep, and now we want rezoning as well. I do have other concerns. It's been mentioned many times tonight already that Nextstep said they were not going to expand. I think that's important. The Farrington Grove board invited them 2 years ago in 2019 to a meeting, and we had at least a half-hour sit-down. It was very pleasant, but they assured us, and we have this in the meeting minutes, they assured us they had no intentions of expanding. And since that time, that very short interval, they have acquired numerous houses These are sober living homes. And for the most part, they're well maintained. I'm not going to argue that part. They also, just in the last couple of months, moved Wabash Valley Recovery Center into the former CPA office building at 500 Farrington. And nobody ever reached out to the neighborhood to ask about these things. They just did it. And so here we are now, moving on to new construction. And so I think when you give your word and then to the neighborhood, and then the neighborhood watches as you expand and you expand and you expand. Again, how many of you have 10 sober living homes within a few blocks of where you live? And then the idea of building new construction in a historic neighborhood. This is deeply troubling. So, well, I'm going to get to the NIMBY part in a few minutes because I'm also very upset about that. But my point is that clearly Nextstep wants to expand, and clearly there's a need for their services in this city. No one is disputing that. But all of their services do not need to be in Farrington's Grove. And so, yes, looking for other areas, for example, south of Union Hospital, would be a great idea. A couple of things. I am troubled by what I perceive to be dog whistles in some of the presentations tonight. Farrington's Grove is referred to as a deteriorating neighborhood when it's convenient, when we're supposed to be grateful because people are going to be building wonderful things in our neighborhood that are supposed to benefit us. It's referred to as a scattered neighborhood when it's convenient, as opposed to the residential district that it is really supposed to be. That's really insulting for those of us who are trying so hard to maintain our family homes and to get more families to move in, which is what we try to do all the time. We're trying to get more single families in. So I don't appreciate that kind of talk about the neighborhood. I will also add that I've seen the letters that the Luger Center, Union Hospital, and Wabash Valley professionals sent in support of the original grant. And it was very interesting. I printed them out and looked at them side by side, and they were largely just cut and pasted. They were all keenly aware of the need for housing. So someone sent them something and said, could you please sign your name to this and maybe modify it a little bit and then send it in support of this project. Okay, I understand that that's how these things work, but Union Hospital and Wabash Valley professionals, they don't care that this dormitory is in Farrington's Grove. They just see a need for services. And I'm sure that Union Hospital will be thrilled, as Mr. Jenkins said, if this facility were nearby. Nextstep has a shuttle bus. If they can afford to build a new building, I'm sure they can afford more shuttle buses to move the women back and forth if they need to. I also understand that the letter from Sheriff Plassey in support of this suggests exactly that if this is denied, and in this case, he may have said it to the city council, but could you please find a different location for this facility? So that's what I'm respectfully asking you to do. I mean, planning is in your name. And as we've said, our neighborhood has been rezoned and rezoned and rezoned for all sorts of purposes that benefit lots of private entities. So I urge you to please deny this rezoning, commend Nextstep on their success, but encourage them to seek a more appropriate location. And as for the NIMBY, that's really upsetting. This is a false dichotomy. Many of us have been touched by recovery. And I shouldn't have to bring up my personal family's struggles with recovery in order to justify to Mr. Shagley or anybody else that I support recovery. That is insulting, especially when I live in a neighborhood where we already have so many facilities that support recovery, unlike a lot of neighborhoods in this city. So thank you for listening to my very long comments. I appreciate it.
Okay, hang on. I have a question for you.
Yes.
How many fraternities are still active in that South 6th Street area north of there?
I'm not the best person. I would guess 5. I mean, I walk my dog there almost every day, but there's some people here who actually live right there.
If you're talking right there, right north, church is that block, probably talking about.
Okay, thank you.
And that number has gone down in the last 4 years.
But there are
I'm
others.
sorry.
And that number has gone down in the last.
And who's acquired those properties?
Most of those, there's only one house in there that's actually owned by fraternity. All fraternities rent them from.
And there are other fraternities within a couple blocks.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Okay, hold on. Did you get the First Lady's name? Terry? Carrie? Very useful. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak to this issue?
Hi, my name's Spencer Carlson, and I will live with my wife, who's back here today as well, at 1200 South 6th Street in Farrington Grove. We're about six houses up north from the church where the Nextstep facilities are. And I've sent some comments already, and some of those I'm going to modify a little bit based on some conversation I had with Councilor Shagley. I appreciate your time today, Richard, on talking to that. One thing I do want to say from the outset, I'm opposed to the new structure. One of the things is some of the reasons why is if you look at the ordinance, it talks about the zero setbacks, and Councilor Shagley and I have talked about that. And he has specified that, hey, that's only regarding the church. If so, we should be able to see that in the amendment. That should be very specific in the amendment, not just saying no setbacks. Otherwise, are we playing games? Does something change? Because if it's not specific to say that it's just for the church, then what can happen with that? I have to talk about housing values. All the housing values have gone up in the last 5 years. If anybody's looking at that, that's what's happened. So that's a non-starter of an argument. My concern would be for John Dice. I don't know how many of you. I don't know what does if you're on the planning commission. Do you actually go? Somebody answer me. Do you guys actually go to the places where the special ordinance has been? If you visit, you check it out. The place where the special ordinance is about. Like, have you all been down to this property and gotten out of your car and looked around? I don't know if that's something that's part of your normal job. Well, I appreciate that if you do. If you don't, I really would encourage that. John's house is really nice. It's one of the nicer homes in Terre Haute. We've been here 4 years. We've driven around a lot. It's really nice. And if you have a big facility put up there like that, that makes that a real tougher sell from any real estate portion. Somebody's going to say, well, what is that? And there's going to be some people who might not have a problem with it. There's going to be a lot of part of the buying public who would not do that. And so that could extend to different ways because it is a different type of structure than the other things in the neighborhood. And so I would definitely consider that because it is going to impact poor John, who has put a ton of work in that house. And again, you can go look at it. It's a really, really nice house. Another thing that I think would need to be considered here is precedence. Precedence. And this is something that Margaret talked about. I personally, I'm not against Nextsteps. I'm not against them when they buy houses or gifted houses and they turn them in, they fix them up. I think there's a lot of win-wins there. That's me personally. I don't speak for everybody on that. I think there's some win-wins because it helps recovery. It also sometimes will really they can reinvigorate a little part of the neighborhood, and that's a really good thing. This is different. This is a new construction. It's also something where you have a dorm. And so if this goes, as already been brought up before, well, maybe something else goes. And now we have 2 dorms or 3 dorms. And all of a sudden now it's not a neighborhood. And so that's a concern I have about that. Again, love the work that's being done. God, there's no question God's working there. I don't question that. And you're setting for this particular situation. You're setting a precedent, and this is planning again. If you're setting a precedent, then okay, the door opens wider. It opens wider for whatever else to come in or to be done. There has been an impact. You know, we live right smack dab. You were just talking about the fraternities. We know all about that. We probably know that better than most people in the room. We've seen the junk from the fraternities. We also have had some unfortunate things with Nextstep. We've had the catcalling. We moved in about 4 years ago, and my wife has been subject to some Nextstep guys while she's doing lawn work, just looking at her. Okay, kind of creepy. My daughters, who didn't grow up here, were catcalled, and they're really not really keen about coming back to Terre Haute because of that. So there is impact like that. A lot of the people in Nextstep, fine. We got to be totally honest about that, but we haven't had that kind of treatment from fraternity boys all around us, literally both sides of us, north and south.
I'm sorry, say that again.
We haven't had that kind of treatment even from fraternity boys who live to the north and south of us. We've had a lot of other junk, but separate story. So one thing I would also just stress, really important with Special Ordinance 42, is if something does go on from here, that you really got to have wording in here that's more specific, that really says this dorm keeps to that function and nothing else. I want to bring up the example from the Hickory, you guys may remember all the stuff about the Hickory one which was earlier this year. There was a separate one. That for those of you who may not know, that was an inpatient facility that was changed from a nursing home into an inpatient drug rehab center. It's very specific, the amendment, and it's wonderful because it ensures the protection of the neighborhood. It ensures that we have some kind of level of accountability in case they want to come in and do something different with it. The one for Hickory says, petitioner will not be using this real estate for any type of walk-in clinic, therefore minimizing the foot traffic at this location. So that was the one that was done in the past. I think that, when I spoke to Councilor Shagley about this earlier today, I think there needs to be some type of wording in this amendment, in this ordinance, similar to that would say that this would be a supervised program. There would be no medications delivered from it, and it wouldn't be some type of, and we'd have to watch the wording of this because I know next up you might have people walking in from the street who might be good clients, but it's not going to be something where it's going to be this really transitional thing where people are coming in and out every 2 days, or there's a line there in the morning, which is completely inappropriate for a neighborhood. I'm scared. One thing that would really scare me to death is if you get some kind of outpatient drug rehab thing, because if it's not specified in this ordinance, there is no accountability to that. We have nothing to go back to, because right now it says in here, it is specific about the 20 women residence recovery center. Recovery center can mean a lot of things. You guys are planning. It needs to say something more specific than that in order to protect the neighborhood, keep them accountable, and also I don't think next up we could work on the wording. They could work on the wording. I don't think that's beyond the confines of what they were talking of having that request is beyond the confines at all of what they're doing. It fits with their mission. It fits with their strategy. But and if that's the case, we should have zero problem putting that in special ordinance. But I am opposed to this. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. My name is Jeff Llewellyn. I'm an attorney with the Wilkinson Law Firm here in Terre Haute. I'm here this evening on behalf specifically of Mr. John Dice, who's sitting here in the front row, and you've heard him mention he is the property owner that lives and owns the home directly south of the property that is proposed for this rezoning. John submitted, I thought, a very well-written letter to you as well, indicating his feelings, beliefs, circumstances, and on the situation opposing the rezoning. And despite Mr. Shagley's comment that you're going to hear a lot of "not in my backyard," I think I didn't hear a lot of that from the people we just heard from and within the letters that were submitted. Sure, there's always going to be some concern. I've stood before this commission and city council in favor of certain recovery type, reentry type homes where individuals of a troubled background are coming into a home setting. And everyone in the neighborhood is always going to have some concern for that. But you really didn't hear a lot of, these are bad people, we don't want them here, we don't trust it. You heard a lot of good, sound planning reasons as to why this should be sent with a non-favorable recommendation. And I'm not going to try to go back through all of those, but I think that's very important. Mr. Shagley talked about, and others talked about, the fact that there are other homes by Nextstep within the neighborhood. And I'm not going to sit here and try to dispute Nextstep isn't a good corporate citizen, doesn't offer good service, isn't a needed program within the community. Nobody, I didn't hear anybody say that. I think we all support that. So that's not what it's about. It's about zoning laws and in zoning enforcement and zoning code that currently exists and a master plan that's in place, that was put in place through years of planning and design for areas within your city and how those areas should be used. Specifically, I'll cite you to the city code, section 10, 112, which is for planned developments. And you're bound to enforce this in making your decisions for approving or not approving. I'll jump back to section 111 first, and specifically it says with regard to planned developments shall follow the procedure outlined within this code. 112 then says before a planned development can be considered, the petitioner must show proof of one of the following unique circumstances. And you'll see boilerplate language within the petition that cites some of these unique circumstances, hardships that relate to the property. And I'm going to turn to that, and I'd like to address those. The petition says your petitioner would allege that there is a hardship due, one, to improvements on the real estate, the nature of the structure in a mixed-use neighborhood, but specifically improvements on the real estate. Well, earlier in the petition on page 1, you'll see your petitioner would respectfully state that the real estate is now current a vacant lot. So what you need to understand here is there are two separate, distinct, independent lots that are at issue here, and they have filed to rezone as an R2 planned development for both of those lots. And there's been a little bit of confusion about, quite frankly, whether one exists that way or not right now. The reality is, as Mr. Baylor pointed out, or the staff report pointed out, both of those lots are R2. There is no R2 planned development in existence on either of those lots right now. Yet the church that sits there is being used in a manner as an R2 planned development and has been for the past several years without any, I'll say, objection or enforcement to stop that. So when you flip back to the hardship can't be a hardship that's created by the property owner or by the user. The hardship and the uniqueness has to do with the land itself, the property itself. And why is it that because of the uniqueness or the hardship of this property, we should allow something different than an R2 zoning? To say that the improvements on the real estate cause a hardship, well, first of all, on Lot 1, there's a church building. It's a historic church building that's been there for over 100 years. It was built within a historic residential district. It's been maintained that way. And yes, we appreciate what Nextstep has done in that regard. But there's nothing that's unique or a hardship about that building. It's there, it's being used as it's being used without any enforcement to say they can't use it that way. The zero lot line was touched upon was stated to go toward that lot and not the other lot, but as been pointed out, that's not clear within any of the restrictions that's being requested here. The second lot, though, the improvements on the real estate, well, there are no improvements on the real estate. So how can you say that you're going to rezone Lot 2, which is a vacant lot next to Mr. Dice's property? The hardship is because of some improvement. Well, there is no improvement, so you can't hang your hat on that. The nature of the structure in a mixed-use neighborhood, it kind of goes back to what one of the prior property owners was talking about, claiming generally this is a mixed-use neighborhood. If you look at the zoning map, the zoning codes, generally speaking, by a large number, this is an R2 district and/or a residential use district, not a commercial district. And the use being proposed here is clearly a commercial use. It's a temporary home, as was pointed out, 90 days, 3 months, 6 months, in and out, and move on. So this isn't a residential use as is consistent with the neighborhood. I touched on earlier, they own several other different homes within this neighborhood or in this district. But as was pointed out by Mr. Shagley, those are homes and those are apartments, and they're used in that fashion. They maintain the building and the structures with the compatibility and integrity of a historic district. They're not changing those things, and they're not operating them as a commercial property. The alleged hardship number 2, they state the physical characteristics of the land, the shape of the petitioner's parcel. Well, if you look on your map at these parcels, lot 1 is approximately a 70-foot wide lot along 6th Street and 170 feet deep along Washington Street. Lot 2, the vacant lot, is approximately 70 feet wide on 6th Street and 170 feet deep. If you go to Mr. Dice's property, it's approximately 70 feet wide, 170 feet deep. If you look at the map in this area, these were platted lots long ago, and they are very consistent in size and shape, and there's nothing unique or any hardship as a result of the lot itself. Thirdly and lastly, they say the hardship is that the parcel is located near district boundary lines. Other parcels owned by petitioner in the area are zoned commercial. Again, if you look at the zoning map, you will see 2 or 3 commercial lots zoned along 6th Street. But that's 2 or 3 out of lots that if you start on the north end at Poplar and go south to Holman, and you could go farther into Voorhees, but this historic residential district is essentially Poplar to Holman, you will find very few commercial properties zoned within there, and the ones that you do find, you'll find that most of those are tied to some kind of residential housing use, for example, an Anthony Square type of situation, not a treatment center for temporary commercial use. So when you apply the code specifically to the alleged hardship or the claimed hardship, you find that in reality there isn't any hardship that would tell this commission or the city council, hey, we need to find other ways to use this land. We can't use it as R2 as the long-term master zoning plan said we should use it. So for that reason, I think on a legal basis, if you will, this should go with a non-favorable recommendation to the council, and I believe the council should as well deny the petition for similar legal reasons. They make the statement in the ordinance, as was somewhat cited to earlier, that the general characteristics of the existing neighborhood will not be altered. Well, again, clearly it will be altered. You're taking a residential home district and putting a commercial use in the middle of it. And I think Mr. Jenkins said pretty well that if you were sitting in Mr. Dice's chair, you would have a hard time saying this makes sense to put this structure, a 20-room dormitory, right into his side yard. And again, the purpose behind the long-term master zoning plan is to look long-term, not to look short-term. And again, once this is rezoned R2 PD, anything within that classification or within the designed uses as a dormitory, again, general terms of how this can be used can change within a matter of years. And the zero setback was one of the variances they asked for. The other was the parking. And I think the parking is an important aspect, because again, if the use changes, I understand they're telling us we don't have residents who have vehicles, but that may not always be the case, yet we're proposing to rezone property without any zoning for a 20-room dormitory that's going to have women with intended of having their infants there, and as someone else pointed out, that's going to bring family, that's going to bring friends. Obviously, you're going to have additional employees to take care of these individuals. Where do all these people park? Where do they go? If you look along 6th Street in Washington right now, you'll see that it's very crowded already as it exists. And then to pile up on top of that a little bit, was touched upon, the next step is promoting and proposing and actually going forward with the opening of a recovery cafe, which is open to the public and inviting more individuals into the area. So to say that we would approve this with no parking, I think is a short-sighted approach and should be strongly considered. Lastly, I'm gonna touch upon the fact that they are good corporate citizens. That's wonderful. The fact that they have homes in the area and they take good care of them, that's wonderful. We should all be that way. And in fact, I would submit there are a bunch of good individual citizens that are within this neighborhood that should be given the same kind of respect that we would give a good corporate citizen. And I think those citizens should be able to rely upon the zoning code as it exists. Some people say, well, it's, for example, the empty lot. If it's an empty lot next to you, Mr. Dice, you should buy that lot. In fact, Mr. Dice did make an offer, which he believed to be reasonable, to buy that lot. That's really neither here nor there, because that's not what it's all about. It's not about you should have to buy a lot to control the lot. It's about I should be able to rely upon the zoning code that's in place and in effect, and to be enforced and acted upon in a manner that doesn't come back around adversely on me just because somebody else is a good corporate citizen. So, for those reasons, I would respectfully ask you to pass this on with an unfavorable recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the Planning Commission? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Counselor, do you have anything else?
Just a couple things. One, I would like to thank Mr. Dice for contacting me. I do appreciate when I get calls from the neighbors. This one was kind of funny. I get a message over our intercom that Mr. Dice is on the phone. He's calling about a rezoning, and Todd Nation told him to call me. I didn't realize Mr. Dice was the neighbor to this property at the time, and I thought it funny that Todd Nation, who's not for this rezoning, told him to call me about a rezoning. I quickly realized he wasn't calling me for a rezoning, but against this rezoning. But I appreciate him calling me and discussing this issue with me. I obviously didn't resolve all his issues. One was what the building was going to look like, and I think we hit that out of the park. As far as new construction goes in this neighborhood, I think we've done that. The second call I got was from Spencer, and I appreciate him calling me. And in talking to him and his concerns about, as he stated here tonight, the variance on the setbacks, we'd be happy to discuss amending this once again to add language saying that that variance is only for Lot 1, that house church, because we believe, as you can tell by the site plan, we won't have any issues with setbacks on Lot 2. So I'll discuss that with my client. Maybe we can speak with Spencer tomorrow on that. And then he also wanted some additional language about the no medicine, which we'd feel comfortable working with him on language that would make him feel more comfortable. And he also brought up the supervision One of the benefits of building this and attaching it to that church, by building it the way it is, it's 20 units, they're calling it a dormitory. Because it's attached to the church has more of the restrooms, it has the kitchen, it has the eating space, which allows this building to be smaller, allows for more supervision, which is one of the things that Spencer requested. I don't know how we can add that into the ordinance, but I'd be happy to talk to him if there's something we can come to an agreement on making him more comfortable with what as we're going forward. But I do want to again thank both Mr. Dice and Spencer for reaching out to me and discussing this with me prior to. I know that wasn't probably easy, but I applaud you for stepping up and doing that. As far as the expansion comments, this really isn't an expansion in that, because it was zoned 2012 for 20 people to reside in the building. There is still some space that is used for that because there's some emergency needs and they have people that stay there. But I think if this goes through and this building is built, they will no longer use the existing church and building for housing because they'll use the new building. So it'll stay within the 20 people, plus some possible infants and children, and it'll keep the neighborhood, I think, at ease because it doesn't increase really much traffic. Speaking of traffic, it was brought up about the cafe, and it's true that it's an incredible program that they were able to bring to Terre Haute through, I believe it's a grant through Linda Gates. And there's several of these popping up around the country, and I feel that we're pretty lucky to get one in Terre Haute. But ultimately, there's been a cafe been run since 2013. So it's already being used as a cafe, and again, the parking, in my understanding, hasn't really been an issue. Is there rare cases where there's a parking? Probably. Just like there's a possibility that one of the client and customers of Nextstep may not always act appropriately. That's going to happen, but that's every neighborhood. That's everywhere we are. But Nextstep does a good job through their supervision of controlling that. They have curfews on the houses on when they can come and go. There's also they're monitored through cameras. So they do what they can to ensure safety at their properties, making sure that their clients and customers are safe from their surroundings. And the question about needing cars, arguments can be made on that all night, but ultimately the history has shown with this organization that their clients and customers don't have vehicles. We don't foresee that changing anytime soon. As far as the moving to a new location, as I mentioned earlier, one of the benefits of building this and attaching it to the church is you have all those services already in that church. If you were to go take this somewhere else, you'd have to build the meeting rooms, you'd have to build the kitchen, you'd have to build more bathrooms, and building a commercial kitchen is an expensive venture, and not to mention all the bathrooms that are associated with that. They're very fortunate by having this lot that their ability to build. And in reality, someone mentioned a vacant lot and the unknown. Anytime you buy a house next to a vacant lot, there's a huge unknown. Or buy a house next to a farm field. You never know when that's going to be turned into something that you may not like. But that's a decision that you make when buying a home. I bought a home in a neighborhood that there's a massive farm field next to that at any time could become whatever it is. And that's just a risk you take in buying your home. But ultimately, you have a neighbor in Nextstep Foundation, which is a local nonprofit, that wants to be a good neighbor. And as you can see by the revised site plan and the renderings, have gone, I think, to a good a level of trying to bring something into the neighborhood that would fit and work out. The fear of in 20 years, 10 years, no need for Nextstep, and they're selling everything. Obviously, then this would all revert back, and we'd be back here again for the new buyer and what they want to do. And that's the beauty about our system, is you have to come back before you make a change and ask for your approval in doing so. With that unknown portion that was mentioned, right now they could build the most undesirable one-bedroom house you can imagine, and there's nothing that could stop them. So the fear of not knowing where this is going, if this building is approved, if this is approved, they get to build that building, then everybody will know that that vacant lot is going to have that building forever, and that's what you're going to have. There is going to be an unknown. So that will bring a little bit of peace in this fear of the unknown, because we can sit here and speculate where this is going to be in 20 years, 30 years, 5 years tomorrow. None of us know, but what we do know is if given approval, they're going to build this building that, to the best of their ability, make it tie in and fit with their current structure. Because it's not easy, and that's a little bit of that hardship, that the existing building on Lot 1 is a tough one to tie into because it's a over 100-year-old church. But they have, over the last several years, they've invested in it. They've created something that no one else seemed to want, and it's now a benefit to the community because it's not a vacant, deteriorating church. Just like the 10 homes that they own, they're not deteriorating, they're maintained and they're taken care of because Nextstep cares about their presence in this area that is such a benefit to their client and customer because of the services and the proximity to that. That's why they want to be here. That's why it works for them, and that's why they are asking you tonight to give this a favorable recommendation for the rezoning of this property so that they can build this building. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Can you clarify the part? They typically do not have cars, or they're not allowed to?
They do not have cars.
But they are allowed to.
They are allowed to have cars. They just don't. I mean,
I know what you're saying. I just want
Yeah.
the question is, could they have a car? Could they have it?
Absolutely, they could have. There's no restrictions on them having a vehicle.
That's the only
Yeah. And there's been no restrictions since they've started. But as I stated earlier, of the 1,300 customers, there's been 18 that had a car. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. President, James R. Jenkins, 1515 South 6th Street. Just to clarify myself, I mean, this could be changed at any time. This is just a wish list here. I mean, we've drawn this up, and there's nothing says this way it's going to be built. And Mr. Carlson, I do disagree on one point here. I'm in no way asking you to set this thing back a little bit, move over to the right, bring it up to the front, paint it orange. I'm asking you not to rezone this to R2. They're already in violation, as been pointed out, with the cafe, and they've been in violation for 7 years running the cafe there. And so now we want to rezone it so you can make us legal. That's bad enough. Don't rezone this. It's an R2, and if they want to build an ugly old house there, they've got every right to build one there, and I'll fight for the right to do it. But it's an R2. We want to quit this series of rezoning to fit whatever people want to throw in there in an historic neighborhood. The only one we have in Terre Haute. It's a dormitory, and it's a cafe existing where it should not.
Is there anyone else who likes to speak to this that has anything new? Okay, if not, I need a motion.
I have a question for Jared, if that's okay. Jared, do you have any concerns, as Mr. Llewellyn expressed, that we'd be in violation of city code if we move forward with this in a favorable recommendation?
It's incumbent upon the petitioner to demonstrate the hardship. Where there is no hardship, the PUD cannot get approved. It's clearly spelled out there. So I'm not going to make an argument for or against the hardship. But it is, like I say, it is incumbent upon the petitioner to prove it. If they have not, to your satisfaction, demonstrated the hardship, then the PUD as it's, or the PD as it's presented should not be.
Thank you.
Okay, while everyone is contemplating their motion, I would like to tell you all, I spent the first 21 years of my life in that neighborhood. I walked by that church hundreds of thousands of times, and I've probably walked by every one of your houses hundreds of thousands of times. So it is a special place to me, and I appreciate your passion for wanting to keep the neighborhood in good shape. I remember when fraternities started coming in. I remember when Union Hospital was there. I remember when a lot of the major changes took place in that neighborhood. So, I need a motion in some direction.
I'll make a motion, we move forward with a favorable recommendation.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed?
Yes.
Okay, we got one. Okay, the motion passes. Motion passed. Yeah, we had enough to pass it.
The numbers.
We're 8 for it.
Can we have a recount?
Yeah, I think it failed,
What?
but it was a favorable recommendation that failed. There was only 2 yeses, I believe.
Yeah.
Do we do a roll call vote or how? I'll ask for a
I
roll call
voted in
vote to
opposition.
clarify your.
Yeah, okay.
You voted in opposition, you voted in opposition, and you voted in opposition.
It was for a favorable. Okay. I mean, you can do a roll call. It's easy enough.
Just to clarify
Sure.
what they're asking.
Sure.
Okay.
So
Well, I think clearly it failed. It
That's not
failed.
what you reported.
I'm sorry. I'm glad you asked.
I don't know, I was ready to go home.
Good job.
She was asking for the vote count. I was just trying to get her the numbers. that she-
Okay.
cannot hear you. You're not speaking in the microphones. I'm deaf, but. Well, they're not working very well.
Okay. That motion failed. It did not have enough to carry. And I apologize because I didn't see the 3. Okay? And I'd already had it written down that it took 2, no more than 2 to carry. Anyway, so we need another motion. It can either be an unfavorable recommendation, it can be no recommendation. It's what we,
or you could table.
Was that a no recommendation?
No recommendations, what his motion was, yeah.
we have a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so it moves forward with no recommendation. Okay? Well, I'm glad you guys caught that. I didn't see yours. I thought you voted with her.
No. What, there was some confusion is when you send a no recommendation, you go yes or no. I mean, you get confused about when you should, I was opposed to sending a good recommendation.
Yeah. Okay. Are you?
I don't know. I mean, my guess is till we can get some answers on that hardship. Probably won't get
Okay. Next item is docket number 72, file 43, 2021 Thompson Acres subdivision.
The property is commonly associated with 3435 East Wood Small Drive. It's 15.88 acres, and there are 4 lots. Surveyor is Mr. White. The applicant is requesting to subdivide 15.88 acres, creating 4 new lots with the intended uses being split for homes. Health Department review is still pending on this one. Public sewer is not available. Public water is not available. There are flood zones associated with these properties. Lots do exceed the minimum lot size requirements. Wood Small Drive is considered a primary collector level roadway. A portion of Lot 1 is located in a FEMA identified special flood hazard area. Any development that takes place in that flood hazard area is required to follow any regulations set forth in the flood hazard ordinance for Vigo County. A private drive will be utilized to access lots 2 through 4. Approval of the plat is contingent upon it being recorded by April 7th, 2022. We offer a favorable recommendation with the conditions needing to be met of a road cut permit if needed, as well as Health Department approval. We did receive a letter of remonstrance from an adjoining property owner who cites concerns over current flooding situation with their driveway, and also concerns over how this subdivision may contribute to additional flooding and damage to their property.
Okay, petitioner present. Anything you want to add or any questions you have? Okay, any questions from the Planning Commission? Anyone speaking in opposition? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Christy Maxwell, and I live at 3351 Eastwood Small. So I'm just to the west of the property. My husband and I own the 10 acres that run from front to back adjacent to this property. I did send the letter regarding the flooding of our driveway. As due to changes to the property already currently, they've taken 90% of the trees off the property, which obviously anytime you get any kind of precipitation, the water's got to go somewhere. And it's flooded our driveway every time it rains, no matter the amount of precipitation we've got. We have been in touch with the highway department, and they are coming out to evaluate if there's something that can be done along the Wood Small, basically the ditching. We've lived there 23 years. We built our house on top of this hill, woods all around us, very private, and now it's different. We're good with change, we can change. But we have some concerns about what's going to be done with and how the subdivision is laid out. Obviously, we have well, we also have septic. We have concerns about both of those and how those are gonna affect our water level, the contamination, the drainage, all of that. The other thing is we want to make sure that this subdivision is going to be for a single-family, detached dwelling or single-structure properties. And those are our main concerns. And if we can find out if that is what this is going to be set up as, there's really nothing that we can do as long as the health department and everything is set up and all the guidelines are followed, not to damage our property. If that can't be given to us today or before you guys make the motion, we'd like to have it tabled until we know exactly what's going to go up on the property next to us. There is a 5-acre plot, there's a 7-acre plot, and 2 1-acre plots, and we're not sure what's going on there. You know, if someone's going to build a large home on one of the properties and have lots of land, that's fine. But it sounds to me like there may be something multifamily, I'm not sure. And I don't do this, obviously, I don't know all the guidelines and everything for subdividing. But I do have questions, and I would like to know before it's actually approved. Thank you.
Hang on a minute. Ma'am? Ma'am? Any questions from the planning commission, this lady? Yes, sir.
Yes. Before Thanksgiving, the week prior to Thanksgiving. We left 2 different messages. We did finally get a call back from Marty. Yes. He actually did come out this week, and then he said he needed to talk to his supervisor. Somebody else was out of the office, so, yeah. No. I need to work, yeah. Ah.
Don't listen to him.
I'm working for the wrong company then.
Well, I'll look into that too.
Okay.
You know, a lot of these things, what our responsibility is, family. Water. So, that's all we're thinking about. That's about how long. I'll make sure that.
Okay. We have since they started taking the trees out in July, August, and then, yes, we've had issues. The trees that they cut, mulched, we had that all come over, so, you know, we were thinking the pipage was clogged, that kind of thing. We have a creek that runs the west of our property, so all of the drainage is going to go that way anyway. Yes. We don't think they're collapsed. Okay, thanks.
Okay, is there anyone speaking in opposition to this petition? Chad, do you want to address any of this?
My name is Matt Voris. I'm with Myers Engineering. I represent Clint White, the surveyor, and our client is Chad Thompson.
Says about Chad.
And it is Chad. Chad did basically clear cut the property when he first purchased it. His intent is, I can say, on the 2 1.15 acre lots, his intent is to construct single-family homes, one on each lot. And then on lot 4, he will do a single-family home on that lot as well. It'll be much larger, I'm told, with probably an outbuilding. As of right now, he intends to do nothing on lot 1, the north lot. It's in a lowland area. A part of it is in a flood zone anyway. We don't call it out as a non-buildable lot because over the years, Jared has told us that's never a good idea to do. It might even be against the rules, I think. So that's their intent.
Okay, any questions from the planning commission?
So you're just saying single family on those 3 lots?
Yeah, they're all going to be single family.
Yeah.
Single family
I
homes.
figured you were. And they have a house on 4, right?
There's no homes on it at all right now. There was a home on part of lot 4 that utilized the existing drive that's there, but it was recently tore down when they clear cut it. That's what I was told.
They don't have a drive-in yet to these lots?
There is a drive there. after the survey was done, it turns out, right, it's kind of half on, it starts out not on it, then some of it's on it. Are you the neighbor to the east? Okay. Have you been talking with Chad about it? Okay. Well, that's why we show the private drive on his own land, that he has a right to construct a drive out to Woods Mall.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else like to address this issue? Yes, ma'am.
Not without it getting rezoned.
Or subdivided.
You'd have to come back here.
Yeah, you would have to come
You'd
back
have
and
to come back
subdivide
to
it
the
again.
commission. Right. I'm not reading. Certainly don't.
You can subdivide it again.
Just have to be said.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Bill, did you have something you wanted to say? Okay. Anyone else like to speak to this issue? I have a motion.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is docket number 73, file 44, 2021, F&C Davis 3-lot subdivision.
This has a rezoning that accompanies the petition. Would you like them heard concurrently?
I'm sorry?
It has a rezoning that accompanies it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Start with the subdivision. F&C Davis 3-lot sub. The property is commonly associated with 5215 Rosedale Road with approximately 650 feet of road frontage. 11.6 acres and 3 lots. The surveyor is Mr. Keller. The request is to subdivide the parent tract into 3 lots. The health department review is still pending. There are some uncertainties with the existing septic system. On, which lot is that?
That'd be lot 3.
Thank you. Yes, lot 3, yes. Okay, sanitary sewer is not available, so IDEM may need to approve of a commercial design approval for that septic system. Public water is not available, and water is currently supplied to lot 3 from lot 1. Lot 2 is in a flood zone. The other 2 lots are not. The lots do exceed the minimum lot size requirements. There are no new public streets with this. The commercial drive cut and location must be approved by engineering. Stormwater drainage may be required with the subdivision. The subdivision is platted into 3 lots. Lot 1 containing the original homestead. Lot 2 has been platted to contain just the FEMA identified special flood hazard area and has been declared non-buildable lot by the property owner. A permit will be required for any changes made to the drive placement in the easement for Lot 3 since it would be considered development per the flood hazard ordinance. Lot 3 has been platted for the commercial use. An easement across Lot 2 is platted in favor of Lot 3. A rezoning of Lot 3 will need to be approved for the continuation of the existing use. So in this case, we do offer a favorable in the primary and secondary with approval of the rezoning for Lots 2 and 3, a drainage and erosion control plan approval if needed, IDEM approval for septic system if needed, and a commercial drive cut approval from engineering. On to the rezoning. The property owners are Frank and Carol Davis, represented by Mr. Hayes. The proposed use is the ongoing use of heavy equipment repair. It is currently A1 agricultural. The proposed zoning is C7 general commercial district. Surrounding uses are agricultural to the north, west, and east, and to the south, residential suburban. The petitioner has requested a rezoning of the newly created lots 2 and 3 of the property to allow for the legal non-conforming use to continue. The rezoning will bring the property into compliance and is necessitated by the subdivision of the property. This use and zoning classification at this location would not normally be looked upon favorably. However, the use has been in place for many years with no complaints. This could be considered a spot zoning. All public use areas will need to be hard surfaced. The site plan calls for white rock to remain. The Board of Zoning Appeals will need to approve of a variance for this to remain. Adequate parking is available. A type C buffer will need to be installed on the south property line. Upon further review of that, I did visit the site, and I believe the current vegetative state would be sufficient for a acting buffer. There's plenty of natural growth and vegetative cover there. So we won't ask for the type C buffer yard to be installed, but we still will ask for Board of Zoning Appeals approval for the non-hard surface. And of course, we would then offer a favorable recommendation for this rezoning request, pending the Board of Zoning Appeals, as well as approval of a major subdivision.
Mr. Hayes.
Thank you. Tim Hayes, attorney at Terre Haute, 118 North 3rd Street. Here on behalf of Frank and Carol Davis. And as I sit here, well, first of all, when I called Frank to remind him about the meeting tonight, he said that he'd gotten a call from Steve Thompson at the Health Department, and it just never came up, and I hadn't asked what the situation was with the water. And Frank and I grew up next to Frank in North Terre Haute by Otter Creek School, and when I was a little boy, I hated it when Frank moved his family up to beyond Mill Dam because it seemed like a long way. His sons and I were good, and his kids and I were good friends. But anyway, that's shortly after that. I think Frank built that what is now the shop there in Lot 3 for a business he had back then, and so it's been there a long, long time. And wasn't surprised, I guess, to learn that it didn't have what would be commonly referred to as an approved septic system now. And then I found out that the water is actually coming from Frank's house, on what's now would be Lot 1. So I talked to the proposed buyer, Mark Brazier, today, and my understanding is that Mark has already checked into getting a septic system installed there. And then also I had told him that Jared had said we could try to get an easement for the water to continue the way it is, but I told Frank I didn't think that was a good idea for down the road in case Frank sells his house, whatever. So I told Mark, you're probably going to need to get a well, and he's not opposed to that. But he said, all I really want to know is how much time would I have to do this. Now, when we talk about time, something occurred to me tonight as I'm sitting here, and there was a plat that was prepared by the surveyor, and Frank was in my office, and we made a change to it. And as I sit here right now, I can't remember exactly what it was, and I don't have what the first draft was. And it may well be that this needs to be a 4-lot subdivision. And I asked for your help on this, Jared and anyone else here, but Frank intends to keep where his house is Lot 1 and also Lot 2. And of course, this became further complicated because of the area that's Lot 2 that's in the flood zone. We thought it was going to be nice and easy at first just to convey the part, to Mark that encompassed the shop and then all the way out to the road, to Rosedale Road. Of course, the problem is that would mean you'd have it would have been a 2-lot sub, but then, or a 1-lot sub, Lot 1 and Lot 2, and you would have had Lot 2 would have been where the south half of Lot 2 and Lot 3 is, but that wasn't going to work because you have part of that that's in flood zone. So, and I must say, every time I ever have one of these, which as you all know, I'm not here that often, once in a blue moon, and when I do, I come to see Jared and Penny and everyone else at Area Planning, and they're always very helpful, and I really appreciate them because I go to them with questions, try to head off as many things as I can before we get here, and they do a fantastic job there at Area Planning, and I appreciate you guys. So I've met with Jared a couple times on this, and so that's when we went back to the surveyor and said, look, we have to redo this because we got a flood zone to contend with. So in sitting here tonight, talking to Frank and looking at this, what Frank really wants to do here is he wants to keep Lot 1 and what I would call the north half of Lot 2, which is north of the easement. He wants to convey to Mr. Brazier Lot 3 and the south half of Lot 2, and I'm not sure how this is the way it is. I think it probably should be a 4-lot sub potentially, unless once this is approved, we can convey the south half of Lot 2 to Mr. Brazier in all of Lot 3. I'm not sure that can be done. So it may well be that we have to resubmit this as a new plat as a 4-lot sub, where, for example, Lot 1 and 2 would be, Lot 1 would remain Frank's, Lot 2 would be where it is north of it, and then Lots 3 and 4 would be at the bottom part, the southern part. So he would convey Lots 3 and 4 to Mr. Brazier. And I'm not quite sure how we ended up this way, but I think it probably should be a 4-lot sub. And if that's the case, it's not going to be a bad thing because Mr. Brazier needs a little time. I guess what I'm interested in now would be your input as to how we, if we table this a month, and then how you feel about this whole thing. And then Mr. Brazier, of course, doesn't want to start digging a septic system if this thing can't work, but we think it can.
You can do a lot of things. I don't mean to butt in, but this works. I mean, if you wanted to do this and quit claim the Lot 2 and the easement to him, he can do that. You can do that. We don't have to be a part of it. It looks like to me you should have been a 2-lot, not a 4-lot.
Well, but
you can have flood zones in a lot. You just can't build in that area. The flood zone doesn't require a property line or a lot designation. So there's all kinds of options. Depends on how fast you wanted to move. If you wanted to move fast, I'd ask for it to be fast.
have shag wheel.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, Mr. Davis wants to keep all of this, all Lot 1 and this.
Right.
And then he wants to convey Lot 3 and the south half of Lot 2 to the buyer.
Right.
Brazier.
Right,
So
which
that's why I'm wondering if it shouldn't be a 4-lot sub. But my understanding was that we couldn't just make it couldn't be 2 lots, because if you had Lot 2, which would be the south half of 2 and 3, that because there's a structure on 3, that it would be a non-buildable lot. There's already a structure there, so we kind of felt like, at least Jared did, that it would need to. Jared thought it would be better to make the area that's in the floodplain a different lot. And so now what I'm thinking is that area that's in the floodplain should have been 2 lots. So
A couple of thoughts.
I drive by there 7 times a day for the last 28 years, and I know Mark Brazier.
Yeah, so we're not in it. Mark's been a tenant of Frank's for a long time. We're not in a huge hurry. We want to get this thing done, but
We could certainly be done cleaner than this, if that's what you're looking for.
Okay, so let me back up a little bit. The reason we recommend excluding flood zones from properties is if FEMA associates any portion of a property with a flood zone, it will consider the entirety of the property in a flood zone. So this prevents any future owners in Lot 3 or Lot 1 from having to afford themselves extra expenses in the form of elevation certificates or flood insurance or anything of that nature.
But the buildings precede all that. They're already there.
If someone new buys it and they have a mortgage for it, they're still required to have flood insurance federally. It's a requirement.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there are 2 ways, I
Does
think.
need 4 lots.
Yeah, FEMA is
As dumb
funding
as
it.
that is.
There are 2 ways we could proceed forward with this. One would be approval of the rezoning and a primary approval of the subdivision, which would give them 2 years to resolve any additional issues before submitting for secondary approval of the subdivision. Which you can alter the number of lots and sizes between primary and secondary, that's no problem. The other way may be a little bit trickier, because you would have to attach deed or title to Lot 2, declaring it unbuildable, and then you could quit claim deed over a portion of it. You would have a taxable entity, but you wouldn't have a legal lot. Or if you ended up with a lot, then you wouldn't have buildable rights on any of it. And we really don't like to attach unbuildable to anything. because at some point in time in the
I
future,
like the
somebody,
first idea better anyway.
yeah, somebody might want to build on it.
I like that. If we can get primary approval, that doesn't slow us down really any
We have
significantly.
2 years to gain secondary approval.
And then what we'll do is, we'll probably just resubmit it as, yeah. Come-
We're working
So
on
this
that.
2-year thing doesn't sound very good to me.
So, yeah, it's hard to believe that Frank's 89, because he doesn't look it, and we've always joked that Frank never seems to age. So, I don't know, maybe that's not a compliment, Frank. You didn't look 89, I guess, back when I was a kid, but he was a wonderful family, wonderful neighbor, and I'm proud to represent him tonight before all of you.
Okay, any questions? Anyone speaking in opposition?
Well, we really just need to know what he wants to do. You want what you're proposing, I suppose.
Either way, I think what Mr. Hayes was saying is that he would be comfortable with the favorable recommendation on the rezoning, and then primary approval of the subdivision.
Is that it would be if that's what Tim wants.
Yeah, I think it's what we'll do, and then we get the primary approval, we'll probably change it to a 4-lot, because I think that'll be cleaner if we do a 4-lot. And Frank conveys 2 lots to Mark and keeps 2 lots. And, one of the lots that Frank keeps is in the flood zone, one is not. And one of the lots that Mark ends up with is in the flood zone, and one is not. And the one that has this shop is not, and it's all good. Yes. Now, I've got another good neighbor here that I've lived next to for the last 30 years.
I just wondered, what's the relationship between this property and that next one at
We're doing both of them right now.
Is that Sean Decker?
5250?
Oh, I don't.
I think that's a mistake.
Yeah,
They got them mixed up in the packet.
yeah, just ignore those 2 pages for
Yeah,
now.
there's a couple things in the
They
packet
got
that
it
don't
mixed
belong
up in
there.
the packet.
Okay,
They got,
Sean Decker's in
oh, I
the
know,
middle.
we were pulling our hair out too.
Yeah,
Old
Oh,
stuff.
it's mixed in with the third pages?
Yeah.
Run the copying machine. I should be fine.
hey, Brendan, don't mention that to Frank, he might. He might.
okay. We have a motion,
It's in the middle of the package.
Random ignore it.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Frank, I just want to say to you, if we pass this, don't go ahead and die. So. Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay, next item is subdivisions, major, primary, secondary, docket number 66, file 38, 2021, Davison Estates subdivision.
Okay, the property is the site of a former mobile home park having access from West National Drive and being approximately 1/2 mile west of Darwin Road. It's 14.42 acres, 10 lots, road access from West National Drive. Surveyor is Mr. Spires. The request is to replat a part of Lot 2A of Weaver Crossing subdivision, which was a replat of Lot 1 and 2 of Deer Run subdivision, into 10 lots for residential development. A rezoning is to accompany this request. The rezoning was submitted on 11/29 and will be heard in January. The health department is it's still pending. There exists on the property multiple septic systems with unknown locations, some of which may span lot lines, which is of concern. Public water is available. It's not in a flood zone. The lots do exceed the minimum lot size requirement. Stormwater drainage will be required with the major subdivisions. The subdivision is subject to a high-voltage transmission easement. Duke Energy must review and approve uses in and around their easement. Those same areas have been deemed non-buildable by the developer. A private street serves the whole of the subdivision. Lots 1 and 4 are from a private drive off the private street. Lots 5 through 8 are served from a separate private drive off the private street. Lots 2, 3, 9, and 10 access the private street directly. The private street will need to be extended a little bit to the west to include direct access for Lot 8. This will maintain compliance with Section 610311B2, which states that a subdivision in which the access requirement of Section 610311A3 is satisfied by a private road that meets neither the public street standard may be developed so long as not more than 3 lots have been created out of that same tract. The Area Planning Commission, at its discretion, may waive the requirement that the applicant complete and dedicate roads or waive the requirement for bonding and paving on rural residential subdivisions consisting of 12 lots or less. Said private roads shall be constructed to meet the geometric standards as set forth in the ordinance, except paving requirements. And the petitioner has requested said waiver. The petitioner must demonstrate to the reasonable satisfaction of the Planning Commission that the private roads will be properly maintained. Further, the seller shall furnish the initial purchaser of a newly created lot served by a private road with a disclosure statement outlining the maintenance responsibilities for the road. Staff would like to request that the agreement be filed in our office prior to recording. A fire truck turnaround in place of a cul-de-sac is proposed, which is permitted. The local fire jurisdiction must approve of the design. If secondary approval is granted, the approval of the plat is contingent upon it being recorded by April 7th, 2022, after the plat is dated and signed by the Secretary of the Commission. We do offer favorable on the primary and the requested waiver, but in light of some of the things that have come to surface from the health department involving possible septic systems spanning lot lines, I think we're going to request the tabling of the secondary approval, until which point in time any issues surrounding those septic system, existing finger systems, existing drainage lines, anything else that was there from the previous trailer park can be brought to light or can be identified and resolved. Because again, we may have to shift lot lines to incorporate those. There may be a number of other things that have to be done. Also would provide opportunity for any issues surrounding the power line easement, utilities, and NDOT. With their new drive cut, any of those things any of those issues will have been resolved by that secondary approval time. So again, we offer a favorable on the primary, but we would request a favorable on the primary and the waiver, but would request a table on the secondary. If you decide to go ahead and approve the secondary, we would request that conditions be added, the health department approval, road cut permit from NDOT, drainage and erosion control plan approval, bonding for infrastructure if not waived, fire department approval, Duke Energy approval, filing with our office a copy of the recorded shared road maintenance, as well as approval of the rezoning upcoming next month. Yeah.
Okay. You going to speak to this issue?
Yes. Again, I'm Matt Voris. I'm Director of Operations for Myers Engineering. Here representing Burl Spires, the surveyor, and the owners here, the Davisons. As stated, it's a 10-lot subdivision. It is a former trailer park several years ago. It was replatted. This is actually a replat of, may not say that anywhere on here that I'm looking at it. But it is technically a replat of Weaver Crossings subdivision that was done a few years ago. I really don't have anything more to add. I mean, I think Jared said it well. As far as the septic systems out there and the health department issues, those are standard things that have to happen after a primary approval. It is their intent to build or to sell for the sale of and construction of single-family homes, which will have their own. I think we stated in here private septic systems to be installed per health department codes on their lots. I think they're still working with, hoping to get public water out there from West Terre Haute, so there won't be wells. Regarding the power line easement, I've got some documentation on that, and we'll take care of that. I will just note that this power line easement, just on down the road, goes right over the top of homes, and then takes a left and goes across US 40. They intend to not build any homes underneath the power line. the private drive or street that's there will remain private, not be dedicated to the public. They're in essence going to use the existing drive that's there. It's not wide enough, so they'll have to widen it technically. The same goes for the driveway. There's an existing curb cut there that's paved with a pipe culvert. They intend to use it. So their hope is to not have to get a new NDOT drive permit. Any other questions? We can answer.
Any questions? Anyone speaking in opposition? Motion.
So move for the waiver and primary, and the secondary to come later, right?
Yeah.
Second. Favor aye? Aye.
Okay. So, this is Larry.
I'm Larry Davis, one of the owners.
Hi, Larry.
The question I'm asking for the Board of Health, since there was a trailer park there years ago, no one knows how the septic system went or what. We've found several and we've destroyed them. We've taken in, we've logged the place and we made that our loading area, but we found it like just by accident. I don't know what all you want done other than that. I mean, you guys don't know where they're at. We didn't know where they was at.
Steve has historical documents depicting at least 3 different finger systems that they proposed at one point in time, and at least a portion of them were installed before the state came in and shut them down.
I think we found 5.
Okay, so, yeah, there's probably more out there than what they even know about. So I would call and ask.
That's what I'm saying. What do we do to satisfy you?
Call Steve Thompson
So
with the
I
health
think-
department.
I think this board has been satisfied up to this point. Now you're gonna have to satisfy the health department
Yes.
in order to gain secondary approval, which is not that big a deal because it's gonna have to get rezoned.
Okay. I just want to know how much more money I got to put in this place.
All right.
Don't
Anything
want
else?
money in it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is docket number 70, file 42, 2021, Hawthorne Woods Phase 3.
Okay, the property is immediately north of Hawthorne Woods Phase 2 and Hawthorne Woods subdivision, 25.51 acres, 40 lots. Road access is off Old Maple Avenue via Hawthorne Woods Road. Surveyor is Mr. Towles. The request is for primary and secondary plat approval of a 40-lot expansion of Hawthorne Woods subdivision. Health Department is approved. Stormwater and drainage calculations have been submitted and are awaiting approval. Sanitary sewer is available. It's not in a flood zone. Lots exceed the minimum lot size requirement. The streets must be built to county road standards and be of hard surface. Stormwater drainage is required with a major subdivision. The setbacks as indicated on the plat are more restrictive than required. However, they match the existing development pattern of previous phases. Drainage easements, placement of sewer and water lines are proposed. Road names are proposed. Major infrastructure improvements are apparent. This plat does replace the previously approved primary plat for Hawthorne Woods Phase 3 subdivision. So we offer favorable in the primary approval with the following conditions needed for secondary approval, that of the drainage and erosion control plan, and bonding for infrastructure if needed.
Okay, Gene, is there anything you want to add or any question you have?
I don't think there's anything critical. We just made some changes on the zoning and the lots. We had 34, now we have 40. But it's R1 zoning, I think, so I think everything looks fine. We're plugging away with the rain.
Yeah. Okay, any questions for Mr. Knopf? Yes, sir.
I didn't look, but there is a minimum required size if the county's going to adopt.
But the minimum that was adopted before was
I think it's 90 feet. And that's, yeah, and we have that in Harrison Woods, and the school buses go in there all the time. So
On the same side.
yeah.
Well, I just want to make sure that, you know, before we take the road in, we have to make sure that it's right.
Nobody from the school corporation has reached out to us, but if we can get something from them saying that they now need to be 90, we can amend that into the subdivision control ordinance when we redo everything.
Larry, Larry Olson,
Okay.
our engineer, has had a cap.
Yeah.
Mine, let's see, like, have that.
Yeah. No. Okay.
As far as I know, we're fine.
Okay, it appears there's no one in opposition here. Do I have a motion?
So moved for approval.
Second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you,
Motion
gentlemen.
passes. Thank you.
His are platted as 50 on there.
Next item is
We're almost there.
Next item is the elusive docket number 71, UCO 1521, 6221 State Road 159, Terre Haute.
Did you have to stay here that long?
I wouldn't want to leave. It's tough to leave.
From an R2 to a C1, neighborhood commercial district. For anybody that wants to know.
Okay.
I've got one person here supporting it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the property owner in this case is Sean Decker, represented by Mr. Shagley. The proposed use is a beauty salon. It's currently R2 two-family residential. The proposed zoning is C1 neighborhood commercial. Common address 6221 State Road 159. Street access will be along State Road 159. Surrounding uses is a mixture of residential and commercial. The corner of State Road 159 and State Road 46 is a heavily trafficked portion of the county. Over time, commercial uses have developed and have been encouraged. The placement of a light commercial use at this location should have a minimal impact on surrounding uses. The petitioned use should have sufficient room for parking. The petitioner must install and maintain a Type-C buffer yard along the north property boundary. Landscape and buffer plan was not submitted as a part of the plan. Utilizing beacon, which can be off, it appears that the front and side yards are at the minimum. The petitioner will need to demonstrate that the minimum front and side yards can be met, or BZA approval for reduction will be needed. Hard surface public use areas are needed. Commercial design drive cut from NDOT is required. We had a discussion with the property owner that he's going to remove the attached garage, which would satisfy one of the boundaries being possibly too close.
Yeah.
And I believe he could pull the demolition permit, so that would satisfy that requirement.
Yeah.
So the only recommendations, the recommendation is favorable. The only conditions remaining would be hard surfacing of public use areas, approval from NDOT for the commercial drive cut design and location, and submittal of the approval on landscape and buffer plan.
Good evening, Mr. President, fellow members of the commission. My name is Richard Shagley. I'm with the law firm Bright, Shagley & Lowry. And tonight I'm here on behalf of Petitioner Sean Decker. He is the property owner at 6221 State Road 159 here. It's a Terre Haute address, but it's in Riley. This is across from Terre Haute Savings Bank on 159. Mr. Decker's in the process of selling this land to an individual who would like to open up a beauty salon. That's why we're here tonight, is to ask for your blessing and a favorable recommendation for the rezoning of this property from R2 to a C1, which will allow for that beauty salon. As Jared mentioned, he put a stipulation in on the cut. The potential owner has already reached out to NDOT, and he's getting that resolved probably not as we speak, earlier today, so that should not be an issue. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Shagley?
Is that the property on the west or east side of Casey's?
South side.
Southeast.
South, yeah.
Just before the railroad track on 159.
Everybody look at your pack.
These packets are confused.
Okay. There is no opposition to this petition. Can I have a motion, please?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Any opposed? Motion passes. That's both our bedtimes, isn't it?
Man, that's right up
Here. Start your Christmas fire. You're a troublemaker.
Everybody else do it was messed up, and nobody else.